Okay. Hello, viewer. Welcome to Chungu Jamii. My name is Betty. I am your host today, and we are going to be discussing a very, very important topic. As you know, in 2020, COVID did happen, and so many of us were affected. The education sector was majorly affected. Our lives and even our businesses were affected, including even the church. And today I have gentlemen with me. I would like them to introduce themselves before we go deeper even into this discussion. Welcome, gentlemen. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Francis Kethenji Chungu. I'm a director at Restoration Education Center, which is situated in Kawangware 46. Thank you.
Welcome.
My name is Silas Karinya. I'm a counseling psychologist and CEO of Amazon Counseling Center. And Amazon Counseling Center, we provide psychological services for individuals, for corporates, embassies, NGOs, basically to create awareness of psychological issues and mental health, but also at the same time to empower people so that they're able to remain stable and transition well and smoothly with their lives.
Wow. You guys are doing a great job. I like that Francis is a school director, and so he has lots of things to tell us about how the schools have been generally. No, 2020 has been such a year that we have never experienced before as Kenyans and even as humans, even globally. This has never happened. You know, having a time where schools are shut down, 9 months, no one is learning. I mean, that is such something that we have never experienced. And I would like to know from you, Francis, how did that go down with you?
Betty, that is a very difficult question to answer. Because you see, what happened in 2020 was not anything expected.
True.
And when the announcement came through from the government that now because of the COVID-19 discovery in our country that schools have to close down, there was that expectation that we are not closing down for long. But that not closing down for long dragged on, and people began realizing that things were not going to be normal as such. So it had its own effects across the board: the learners, the parents, the teachers, the workers, the school owners, and by and large even the society. So, and as we sit here today looking back, you realize that there are many things which affect on both sides, positive and negative. But we thank God that now we are back to school. We are picking the pieces slowly by slowly, and maybe God being on our side, we may find ourselves back to the normal we knew.
The normal we knew.
Yes.
I don't know whether we will actually get back to that normal we knew. We will get to know in a bit whether there will be such a possibility. But Silas, also in 2020, you know, people lost their jobs. Some people had pay cuts, and there were so many uncertainties and challenges, even in businesses and families. At points, we even saw that the domestic violence had risen to, you know, a point that we had also never experienced. And some people are saying it's because all of you are now locked down together. There's no common conversation. Everyone is used to the husband goes out, the wife goes out to meet in the evening. And so there's minimal talk. But now you are locked down together, looking at each other whole day. No one knows whether we will have food. No one knows what's going to be there tomorrow. And then there was so much domestic violence. There's so much disagreements in families. You know, how are people now settling after all that?
So being a psychologist and of course being in the front line, you know, helping people be able to gain some resilience, I can assure you I've had all manner of stories and experiences that people have been through. It's true that people were locked down, and when you're locked down, there are many other things that can happen. Even if it's not about a illness, if you're taken to prison, that's lockdown of some sort. If, for example, you're bedridden and you cannot work and continue with your normal activities of the day, that is a sense of, lockdown of some sort.
True.
And therefore, when we see those cases, those are normal things that we expect. One, we expect that mental issues, mental problems will scale. We also expect that use of substance will increase. For example, alcohol, use of other, recreative substances and all that, we know that is going to increase in some way. We also know that domestic issues are likely to also be another thing that will be scaling.
Yeah.
Why all this? Simply because every time a human being is disrupted from the normal life, whereby you wake up in the morning, you're excited to go to work, you take shower, you do everything else just like you had planned. When you go on with that kind of life, then we call it normal and oriented. True. Because there is no disruption of some sort. But the moment there is a disruption, there is a sense of a gap of emptiness of some sort. Because now you have to fill in either with some skills, you have to fill in those gaps with, whatever else, so that you're able to transition and move smoothly from one space or one point to the other. Now, usually within this gap, a lot of uncertainty, and then of course anxiety now comes in, a lot of worry comes in, stress becomes too much, and then people now start looking for a way of relieving themselves, of getting out of whatever it is that they're experiencing. And now, because people probably did not focus consciously on resilience building or skills that may help them to manage stress, you realize now they are coping in a negative way. And part of coping in a negative way is either now using the substance. When you use substance, you are likely to be violent. And so you go home, domestic issues begin happening because you never sit down to really think about issues like, skills that can help you in conflict resolution management and all that. So because you never thought of that, now you start fighting, you can't communicate, and then we see these other things happening.
You're caught unawares and
Definitely.
You have no skills to help you cope in such kinds of moments.
Yes.
Wow. So detailed. So that is exactly what happened, because it's not that something strange did happen. It's just that people are used to a particular way of life.
Absolutely.
And now there is a disruption and they don't know how to fit in and they have to get something to fill the gaps. And mostly that happened negatively, unfortunately. Now getting back to the schools, Francis.
Yes.
Most of the schools in our country is a business. Much as we are providing education for children, there is also a business, especially for the private schools. They are doing this to benefit the society as they also benefit. Now, schools were shut down unexpectedly. And I know that the government's teachers, or rather government schools, the government teachers were being paid. And so that's not a problem. But now for the private schools, were they able to continue paying their teachers for the 9 months duration?
Betty, you realize that, and if you go by the information which has come from the Kenya Private Schools Association, as of now, 339 member schools of Kenya Private Schools Associations have not resumed learning.
Oh my God.
They have closed shop. And that tells you the effects of COVID-19 in terms of the employees, the teachers, is there. Because you see, in schools, most of the time, much of the income comes from the money that is collected as school fees.
Yes.
And that is the money that goes into learning the schools, paying fees. You realize that some of the schools, good as it may be, their facilities like loans, they are paying. So when it comes to a point where schools just close abruptly, it means that income has just stopped abruptly. Because you may not know it, but when children are not in school, parents don't pay fees. Even if they owe the school money, they don't pay fees.
I know. Even those arrears, they couldn't pay.
There are schools which immediately were not able to pay the salaries. There are schools which began paying salaries, but a certain percentage. Other schools reinvented themselves and we got into online learning. Because like I said, in March there was an expectation that it may not take long.
Bounce back quickly.
Maybe by May we are going to be back to school.
Yes.
By July we are back to school. Then August we are back to school. So the online learning was also a way of trying to generate income to sustain the teachers. But generally not every school was able to pay their teachers with the COVID-19 situation.
And even go online.
And bear in mind, I'm talking about schools which are under Kenya Private Schools Association. We have many other schools, private schools in the informal sector, which are not members of any associations, and they are still learning.
Yeah.
So the effect on the teachers, the learner, the teachers and the workers was there. Salaries just within time. And even if you are able to pay, let's say by the end of March, you move to April, anticipating that there may be we may be resuming in May. Willing as you may be willing, you might realize that you are not able to maintain it. And that's why we have seen there are schools which turned into businesses, rentals, others closed, others went into farming, trying to generate income. So teachers suffered. I can tell you that for free. Teachers suffered. But again, let me hasten to say it was not intentional.
Of course, it was not intentional.
Because if there's no money in the account, there's no money.
But how would you even pay and they were not doing work?
No, out of, you know, they are not just workers. These are people you are developing, people who have become a community or a society within the school.
True.
You are willing to pay.
Yes.
But maybe there is no that money. So different schools came up with different ways of trying to reach out to their workers and maintain them. Maybe if possibly you have a worker who has a need, you try to see how best you can sort it. House rents, because with no money, there's no house rents.
Yeah.
And majority of teachers and to relocate back up country, and especially from the city, because life back up country becomes a little bit bearable. So I can tell you they had a challenge in terms of getting their pay, and some of them never got any pay.
Tell us, how was that psychologically, especially for the staff that lost their job? Imagine you have to relocate back to upcountry, or you even have to keep up with the city life, adjusting a little, and you have children, you have many explanations to do, you have rent to pay. I mean, how did you handle such kinds of cases?
Yeah, so as a psychologist, I don't just focus on work, teaching, or loss of a job, having a job as just about income. It brings in a lot other beneficial things. For example, it gives you a social platform to be able to join others, be with them, share with them, talk to them. It also creates a routine. You're waking up every morning, planning that this is what I will do, and then finally this time I'll go to school, then I will teach the whole day, or I will do whatever kind of work I do. The whole day, then in the evening I'll be coming home. Then my weekend I'll be able to do this. So your work actually somehow manages your week, your day, your month, your year, all year. So it creates a sense of routine. And so that routine that which you create actually enables you to be able to move on with life without being bored, but at the same time also feeling like you're making some achievement in your life, because of course you're getting some income and you're able to provide for your children and everything else. So there's no sense of stagnation as such, because you're going on with work. So you don't feel like you've just actualized yourself that you don't know what to do next. So as long as you're going to work, there is that sense of, providing and making a contribution, positive contribution for my family, for my society, and all that. So there is also a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment when you're doing that. So the moment now that is taken from you, you enter into a state we call depression. Not depression as a mental illness as such, but a state that you are helpless.
Yes.
You want to go and teach, but you have no chance. You need an income for this and the other thing, but there is no money. So you enter into that state. Now, that state usually comes with quite a number of other emotional and also behavioral kind of behavioral manifestation. And part of it is maybe things like not able to sleep, having a lot of anger, irritable, losing hope, feeling like life is useless, you're not making any progress in your life. And that alone makes you get to a point that now even relating with others, because you're not present to them, you're already carrying so much, you're thinking so much about what are my children going to eat, what am I going to use to pay the school fee, to pay the rent and everything else. And because of these thoughts, you're isolated almost in your own world. And so anyone who tries to come and disturb you, let's say a child is asking for this and the other thing, these are the moments now we hear of cases like, you cut your child, you beat up your child, you burnt your child, you did all these other things because you are carrying so much in your mind. And at times, because we have not developed also crisis management skills that are actually very helpful in life, you realize that what we do is we just withdraw and we stay all by ourselves. Depression now, as a mental illness, will hit. And once it hits, we hear of cases of suicide.
Actually, a lot of teachers that I know suffered insomnia.
Yeah.
Because they were used to a kind of routine, and they were used to, being busy at certain times, and then they get so tired that when they come home, they just want to sleep. But then now, the whole day, the activity is withdrawn. And so, sleep was just not part of their to-do list.
And not only sleep, actually even obesity. It's another thing that started happening. We have seen people really struggling a lot. And so when your body changes and it was fit like all along, you're feeling good about yourself, another source of stress, apart from the pandemic that is taking place, apart from the loss of the job, there are also the way you look at yourself, your body and all that. So that becomes another issue. At times
depression was just, the only thing that would come.
At times you could go and be with others. Now you can't go out because, first of all, there is lockdown.
Yes.
But even after the lockdown, you don't have money, for example, to go and sit and take coffee or whatever. You cannot have that social platform. And so those moments that you would spend with others and then give you a chance of relieving or what we call catharsis, you have a moment to share with them the challenges that you're going through. You don't have that opportunity. The challenges are still going on. And so
there was no way to let out. Yeah. I wonder what happened for the teachers, Francis, because, that is their life. This is their life. They're used to interactions. They're not like people who go to the office and they're on their computer the whole time. Teachers are used to talking all day, interactions, social, one-on-one kinds of people. But now this is taken away, and we've heard clearly what Silas has to say. But now for this kind of business, for this kind of work, the teachers that the teachers that are in your cycle, how much were they affected? Have they been able to get back?
Like Silas said, the effect was monumental. And bearing in mind, it is not something you had expected. When you're working, within a working environment, you have that assurance that in case I'm stuck somewhere, maybe I can talk to my employer and we can see how to work it out. Now, you are out of business. And initially, for the first 2 or 3 months, there was still hope. Then all of a sudden, you realize that this thing is not going to be as easy as it was. And then there is that care. Initially, there was anger. I can tell you, because even there was talk within the social medias for teachers within private schools that the school owners were not taking care of them. They don't care about their teachers. No one is caring, and platform came in. Anger was there manifest because you are trying to see, why can't my boss give me my salary or continue paying me? And like when the government comes and says, we are going to continue paying our teachers, you're wondering, why can't also my boss continue paying me? So you are angry, you are emotional, and then they are talking about the effect of COVID-19 is spreading everywhere, and you are wondering, suppose I get sick, or suppose my child gets sick, or suppose a relative or someone who is under your care gets sick. So you find you are in a situation where your mind is overwhelmed. And when you look anywhere, you don't see help. And then even we had teachers who, if you remember, and even it came in the news, in the news when we had teachers who had joined the Kazi Mutaani, which the government was running as a way of And now you can imagine a teacher, you are extreme, you are feeling as though you have been degraded.
Yes.
Having to take a shovel or a broom and walk around the same community you have been teaching, or having to go and do mjengo work within the same community you are teaching, and you are a teacher.
And that's what the government had for cushioning COVID, you know.
Yes, but it was not meant for teachers, it was meant for but now, because you have nothing else to do, I know a teacher who was engaged in within our church compound as a guard at night. In fact, we came to learn it quite late in the day that this was a teacher, but because he has nothing else to do, and there is an offer here that he can be a guard, so teachers found themselves in places they had not envisioned themselves being in.
That's a very, very important place for this discussion.
Yes.
Having a psychologist with us and having you who has gone through this unexpected experience, I want us to take a short break and come back and discuss that in details, because what lessons were there for us to learn? This was a pandemic, you know, and when you look at the way the world is moving, we cannot say this was the last. We are bouncing back to the normal, and it's important for us to learn. Like you talked about risk management, it's important for us to learn how can we deal and live in such uncertain times. Viewer, we are taking a short break. We are discussing about COVID-19 lessons. I have gentlemen with me here, and we are talking about the lessons that we learned in 2020. Stay with us.
Let's go! Everybody go down. Go down. Everybody go down. Everybody go down.
Bwana, hashtag ni moja, tumia hashtag Friday Entertainment, alafu hakikisha unasongelea screen yako. Burudani sio burudani bila wakuu wa burudani ugani, si ndio? Sisi kama wakuu wa burudani tutakuwa tunahakikisha kwamba tunakupa burudani kila siku ya Ijumaa kuanzia mida ya saa 12 mpaka mida ya 4 kamili. Sio Mr. Double J, alafu nitakuwa na mwanangu wa Power, atakuwa anahakikisha kwamba kila kitu kiko fresh.
But just take kama kawa kama dawa, nitakuwa nakupatia muziki mishe hapo, and I'll be giving you something like this.
Hallelujah, deha na DJ show, naendelea na katika kwenye flow, nuta hebu ni show, kama ni fun,
Sahau tena tutakuwa tunapiga story na washikaji zetu, wageni wetu, wasanii wetu, alafu kila kitu kinakuwa vizuri zaidi. Yeah.
Theology schools were established to prepare people to preach the clear gospel of Jesus Christ. They were designed to teach the truths of the Bible and to build an unwavering faith in God. However, as time has passed, theological institutions found themselves placing the thoughts of man above the Word of God. It's time to look past rigid and theory-centric theological curricula and return to a true study of the Bible that will instill faith in our hearts and strengthen our spirits. Good News Theology School offers practical, flexible, and affordable systematic study of the Word through insightful lectures, engaging student-led projects, and heart-to-heart fellowship with classmates and professors alike. Good News Theology School is where future servants of the gospel learn how to preach the light of Jesus Christ to those who are stuck in sin and despair. Register today and become a missionary of Christ, no matter where you are.
My name is Tigist Hailu.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ruben West.
I'm Dr. Charles Mukuka.
From the United States of America.
I come from Ethiopia.
From Zambia.
I love Kenya very much.
I love the Kenyan people.
Love is not by confession. Love is by action.
Come on now.
When you are a husband, you are not a husband.
It's very important.
You can count the seeds in an apple, but you can never count the number of apples in a seed.
Her phone is her phone. My phone is my phone.
You only know what you know.
Who forced you?
The more you spend time together, the more strong.
A woman is like a Bible.
To tell me that they were born and it wasn't from a female, I'd like to know.
A woman, she's a good asset. And a woman, she's a very, very good investment.
Welcome back, viewer. I am joined by yet another guest. We have an apostle with us. He's going to be introducing himself shortly and take us through also what challenges did the church go through and how are we able to cope up right now. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Joshua Adegoke. I'm an apostle of Christ to the youth in Africa and globally. Born a Nigerian, presently residing in Kenya. So it's been good to be here.
Wow. Good to have you, Apostle. Thank you for joining us. Just before you came in, we were talking about the COVID lessons that we have learned in 2020. Okay. And as you know, our schools were shut down. A lot of our business also were shut down. Most of the people who were working also got a pay cut, and some people lost their jobs completely. The church as well, for the first time, you know, we were not able to gather together and have fellowship and worship as usual. We have been able to get to some new normals. I don't know how that has been for you. So before we went on a break, that is just where we were. You could tell us in a bit after your colleagues get to say something so that you are able to familiarize. So Silas, Francis had mentioned a very important point that some of the teachers, you know, had to kind of lose themselves and now forget about the identity and their profession and be even night guards to be able to make a living. Talking about the lessons that COVID has taught us, you know, what should you say about such kind of a thing? Is it losing your self-esteem? Is it stooping too low? Was it a worse thing to do?
Now that I think depends on what did the job mean to you. There is one question that I ask oftentimes when I'm doing therapy. I usually ask, who are you? Because not many of us really sit down and ask ourselves who we are.
True.
We usually focus on, you know, you have children you need to take back to school. You have a rent that you need to pay. You have you know, faithful that you need to go and minister. And we really sit down and focus on ourselves. So the question of meaning is also a question of value. So what value did you assign to your work? Now, if your work basically was, you know, giving you a certain status, and that status now is lost because you have to go and be on guard, then certainly you're going to be impacted psychologically. You're feeling like you're being degraded. And so the moment you have that conflict of identity, you are identifying yourself as a teacher, now you're identifying yourself as on guard. That conflict of identity produces something we call mental conflict. And mental conflict is actually the reason why so many people are having mental issues, mental problems, having even depression. So that is one thing that I think that person is experiencing at that point. However, there are people who have a mindset. There are two kinds of mindset. One is growth mindset. The other one is fixed mindset. Now, if you have a fixed mindset as a teacher, then it means you must remain so. If anything else comes, you don't know how to shift. and change to something different. But the one who has growth mindset is actually knows very well I'm a teacher, but if anything happens in my life, I can actually shift and become a business person, I can become a guard, I can become whatever. Because they do not attach their identity to what they do. The identity remains who they are, they know themselves, they know their value, and that value is not taken by the kind of work you do. Neither can work actually give you a better identity, a better value, according to that person who has a growth mindset. So for them, they can move on. So with growth mindset, they are able to bounce back. But with fixed mindset, they don't believe in changing anything. Things have to go their way, the way they have intended it to happen. So that causes a lot of impact if you have a fixed mindset. But if you have a growth mindset, you can actually shift and even get better to a better place than even where you are as a teacher.
True.
And some of the lessons that actually people are learning at the moment is that there is a new way of looking at things.
There's a new way. First, they need to actually be flexible, as you have put it, without touching on or changing your identity. Apostle Joshua, looking at the church, it was a very strange thing. A lot of people know that God is mighty and superpower. And I imagine the many times that people probably came to you and said, this thing is going to stop in a month and we are not going to be stopped. We are going to carry on. How possible was that, things now changed and even you bowed to the pressure of closing down the churches and having to stay home? How was that for you?
Thank you very much. If I take church to be generally an umbrella for schools, entertainment, tourism, because everything is under the church or under the religion umbrella. So to all of us, including the church, actually it is something we weren't expecting. It hit us hard. Everyone felt it.
True.
You felt the pain, you felt the shock, But out of that, we've been able to see something bigger.
You've been able to see something
exactly,
bigger.
And that's why the lessons of life or the life lessons now come to be, because we're not looking at what hit us. We're not looking at what next for us. Because if you focus on what hit you, you will stay on the same spot and not being able to move forward.
And that happens later in life. We don't realize immediately that this was a good thing for us until we have gone through it.
That's right.
During the process, how did you and your members manage? How did you handle that? Because I guess not only are they your church members, but they are also people's wives and husbands. They are also employees. They also had difficult times, and they would prefer to come to a man of God, before needing to pay to go to a psychologist.
That's right.
How did you handle knowing that they were dealing with a supreme God?
In that line, we were able to handle the situation because the wisdom of God now is superior to what was happening. And that is by making people to realize that all things work together for good. That this is happening to us doesn't mean that there is no plan of God for us. Yeah, they were faced with paying house rent. Church was also faced with paying the rent and paying bills and all of that. But in the midst of that, we're just able to adapt. Now, one of the key things that I've learned in life is adaptability and creativity is the call behind a successful and a moving life. If you are not able to adapt, then you are not worthy being on the face of this earth.
You are not worthy.
You are not worthy.
He has mentioned adaptability, and I was just going to talk about flexibility. Getting back to Francis, there are schools that were actually paying rent. I don't know whether part of those schools are in Kepsa, but let's try to think about them who were supposed to be paying rent to their landlords, and now there's no income. What happened to such kinds of schools?
Definitely what is going to happen is that you are going to be evicted if you're not able to pay your rents, or you have to negotiate with your landlords to see whether you can come to an amicable way of looking at it and when you can pay the rents. But there's something that Silas has said. It all depends with the mind you have. And also Joshua's mentioned, the Apostle Joshua's mentioned it about adaptability. Because someone said, always keep the main picture as the main picture.
Okay.
You know, the closing of a school or being evicting an institution from a location, it's not necessarily that the school has come to an end. Because if I'm the owner of the school, I'm the person who is running the school, I've only lost structures and allocation. I still am in contact with those who are my parents. So if I chose to move to that next place and begin the school and get in touch with everybody and says, when school resumes, we are going to be location. Okay? And that's why you find, even leave alone those who are in rented places, even people who had their own properties, they adopted very quickly. They had a different mindset and said, if school is not coming back as soon as you expect it to be, these classes can become houses for rent. Or I can lay a chicken in this class, lay a pigs in this class, farm bananas and skuma wiki in the field.
All of those things need capital. And capital was the issue. Capital was the reason you were not able to stay there.
The element of capital, it all depends on what do you want to do. Because you see, 10,000 can be capital, 20,000 can be capital, 1,000, 100,000 can be capital. So you see, it all depends on the mindset you have. Instead of sitting back and crying and mourning, what best can you do? I can walk to my landlord and say, look, you know I've been your tenant for all these years. But as it is right now, I'm not able to pay you rent. Not because I don't want to, but you see where the situation is. And instead of me holding back your property, I want to release it over to you. In case something comes better, I can still come back and say, here I am. And that is someone who is understanding. Instead of getting into a tussle where someone has to come and say, you haven't paid our rent, we are going to evict you. You don't wait until it gets to that point. It's all about resilience.
I wish humans were that understanding.
In fact, I think one thing we need to begin seeing from COVID-19 is that nothing is permanent.
Nothing is permanent.
Absolutely.
Nothing is permanent.
And when you have that mindset, and like Silas said, you can today cease being a teacher and tomorrow become a farmer. There are teachers who have gone back to the villages and they are not coming back to teaching because you went and began farming tomatoes and they are giving you money on a daily basis. You don't want to wait until the end of the month. Why should you come back and do something which possibly, not because you don't want to be a teacher. If you wanted to, you can be. I can tell you right now, I'm aware of teachers who have begun their own school because the school they were in was evicted. And the manager, I don't know where the manager is, but it's like they have said, if we came together, three of us, so we can move to this place and begin. It's all about the mindset, the resilient, adaptability, and realizing that nothing is permanent. If we can invent the first one, we can invent the second. Remember, you are the bearer of the vision.
Wow. I understand. Now, Apostle Joshua, think about the churches that were on rented premises. I already talked about that.
Okay.
But now the church itself, there are pastors who live and survive on the offerings they were receiving.
Okay.
There are churches that were not able to proceed, even adapting to the new normal because some people moved to online. But certain churches had neither television stations. They had no way of reaching their members except physically, which was not allowed and permitted then. How did they survive? Speaking as an apostle, I guess you have, an umbrella of churches that you oversee. I need to know, what happened in our country? What happened even globally, even back in Nigeria? How was that handled? Pastors who depend on
strictly income.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. And I believe, moving now from the word I use, adaptability, we now go into creativity. like he was saying about the teacher who has become a farmer or something else. You see, if you lack creativity, no matter who you are, being a pastor, being a prophet, being an engineer, if you don't have creativity, then stagnancy is an order of the day for you. So for the church, or for pastors, or for men of God, women of God out there who are not able to think out of the box or without the box. All along you have depend on what comes into the church to survive. Now the people no longer gather in the church. That is where Paul said, permit me to use the scripture, Philippians 4:12 down to 13. He was saying, I know how to abase, I know how to abound. I know how to be full, I know how to be hungry. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So if you are the one who has always been depending on what comes to the offering box, this is the season for creativity. And I believe COVID-19 has forced all of us to this part of being creative. It has brought out that nature in every human, especially those who want to make a mark or move to the next level. It has brought out the creativity in us. People who thought could never, or they couldn't do something in certain way before, now I've been able to creatively said, I think if this is not working, I can do it this way. So for churches, like you said, some have moved to online. You don't necessarily have to gather the people physically. You don't have to go knock on their doors. You can even do the work of ministry by calling them on phone. You can do online, you don't have data, but you can call them. We can have prayer meeting, you can text them. So whichever way it is, the COVID-19 has made the world to become ever creative than we used to be.
True.
And that is one thing I see as the benefit of COVID-19.
Wow. I like that you call it a benefit. Everyone is crying, Silas, if you have had that experience. A lot of people are complaining more than being thankful for COVID-19 and the effects that it came with. And some people have remained jobless to date. Some people moved and relocated to the village to date. They are not even aware. They don't know how they are going to get the property that they left beside, and it has had such a negative impact on them. The people who come to you who are such hit and had pay cuts, if I look at them, I find them a little bit better because they had a way of survival, a means of keeping up as compared to those who had nothing at all. What is your view of those that completely lost and had nothing and now were just wondering, what to do, where to go, where to start from?
Okay. I think for me, I will address this once directly to them, that it's going to begin where you are, realizing, normalizing that, or allowing this, looking at it like this situation is normal to me. It is abnormal. We know that very well.
Yeah.
But this is how it is. So you admit and accept that this is how it is. So from where I am now, how do I move on? Because if you don't ask that question of how do I move on, then you remain stuck. And I think he said that very well. You remain there. That means if your identity was lost, it's lost forever. And you can never move on with life. You can also not transition. So how do I move on from here? Now, you're not comparing yourself with another teacher. You're not comparing yourself with your sister or brother. You're looking at your own predicament, your situation, the quagmire that you're in at that very moment. How do I move on? Now, that question of how do I makes you stop blaming the government, blaming your employer, blaming everybody else. You focus on yourself. And when you focus on yourself, what you tap is what we call the inner resources. You tap your resources. Now, that's where creativity comes in. You realize, by the way, before I got to a teaching job, I was doing maybe farming or something else. And so you start now initiating those ideas, actualizing them. And sometimes, just like Francis said very well, you don't have to really have a lot of money for you to be able to do that. You can begin with whatever little you have. Some other times, it can be a moment also of learning some skills, so that you are able to move on from where you are stagnating, and then you're able to move on. Now, what I've noticed, just like you mentioned, and even with the people that I've been working with, there are people that this COVID effect has been a blessing for them. Okay, for us who are in mental health, maybe yes, because there are so many people coming to us, okay? But also there are other people who have sat down.
We had many clients that they had to pay.
Yes, and there are other people who have sat down and they have asked themselves this simple question. How did we think that we need this roofing? It is because maybe there was a lot of interference from weather, you know? And so they thought we need to take care of this because of the normal condition that was there then. So we have another new normal condition. So how do we then become more creative in this event that is taking place right now? And we are able also to have our own kind of invention that is coming from the new situation. Not always relying on what happened then. Because I'm sure, for example, like pastors, they appreciate the coming of technology and all that, okay? But then technology came about because of a need that was there. So now we have new needs. So how do we also create from these new needs, other than complaining, how do we tap from ourselves and learn new skills and new ways of life? One of the key things that I've heard from business people, they are talking of stocking. So initially, they knew that whatever they order, it will come within 1 month. Now they are thinking of ordering 5 months before, beforehand.
Yes.
So that along the way, they have a flow of their stock or whatever it is. There are others who have also learned there were loopholes in their chain supply. And so what they are doing is they are trying to fill in those gaps so that should something happen, they will still continue in business. Now, in terms of relationships also, is another thing that has really, really been impacted.
For
example, if you have lost a job, you are the main provider of the family. So here are children looking at you. Your spouse probably is also expecting something. You don't know how to handle that. So if you don't have any skill at all to enable you deal with that uncertainty, then you lose it. But if you can take this opportunity also to learn new skills in terms of relationship, for example, learn conflict resolution skills. That is key in the relationship, whether there is pandemic or not. It is necessary. And again, you have a lot of time together. For example, when it was complete lockdown, there was a lot of time together. So you learn this person, you know you know about their values, you know about their mindset. And so from that interaction, you are able to know the best way to accommodate each other and the best way to communicate. So it hasn't been a blessing in some way to those people. They may have lost their jobs, but maybe they have restored their relationship.
Yes.
So it's exploring and looking at the whole picture of what has taken place, and then from there asking, how do I move on?
Francis, what do you hear the two gentlemen say?
What they are saying is that, is even as we talk about schools and schools closing and teachers losing jobs, we should not remain in one position. We need to build the support cycle around us should be a cycle that always pushes you ahead. A school, leave alone COVID-19, a school can go bankrupt and learn under. Are you going to learn under? We need to open our minds and be very innovative. And let me say something. And it's not only for the private schools, but I think for the learning in our country as such, we need right now to seize the moments and learn outside even classrooms. We don't want to bring everybody to a building so that people can learn. We saw online classes moving on, and people are learning. But we need to look at our education system and say, this is a rigid system. Because what we need is to learn. We need to adopt even examining systems, which you don't have to be in a school for Lao. It's like everybody now has gone back to class.
And there's so much
competition. And some of these children, they're asking very difficult questions. I had a nephew of mine, and I asked him, which class are you going to? So he insists that he is going to the next class. But I keep on telling him, you are going back to second term. They can't even understand because they have been learning online, and according to them, they have completed that part. Does it mean that we cannot have a system which can evaluate this particular boy and say, he is ready for the next level? So that we don't remain stagnant in the same position just because we feel that that is how the cycle needs to keep on learning. Teachers needs to be innovative. And I'm not saying they are not innovative, but you need to look at it. And not only teaching, in any aspect, even if it is in pastoral ministry. What would happen today if I'm not a teacher? Let me give you a good example.
I need to hear that. And I want to give you more time. I will give you more time.
Yes.
But first, I want us to take a break here and then move to the next to just digest this, because we haven't gotten to the key lessons that we learned. We need to let people know out there the lessons we learned and how to now move forward facing the future. This may not be the only pandemic. We may have yet one or two more to go before the coming of Jesus. So, viewer, thank you so much for watching this part. We want to move to the next part of this discussion and just get to exactly what lessons did COVID-19 bring to us, to our living rooms, to our lives, to our society, to our schools. I have these gentlemen who are going to tell us that precisely, and I hope that you are going to take up these lessons as well. For now, my name is Betty. I've been your host. Thank you.